Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of News Bants with myself, being Vite.
And me, Paul Nezendonyi.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, B. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. We are officially in lockdown 2.
Yes, here we go again.
Here we go again. Meantime, Trumpy is still in the White House.
I know, it just feels like we can't get rid of him.
I know, but hopefully by the time we do the next recording, hopefully he'll be kind of like on the lawn and his bags will be kind of like out there and be waiting for his Uber to take him home. Hopefully.
Fingers
Hopefully. Indeed, indeed. Well, we thought it'd be quite good to talk about COVID and lockdown 2 because there's been lots happening around COVID. And obviously, most recently, we've had some positive news in that Pfizer have developed a vaccine which still needs to go through various stages of approval, but it looks like that vaccine apparently it's effective in 90% of people with regards to helping them not to develop COVID symptoms, which is great news.
Yes, brilliant. It really does feel like there are some green shoots and there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There is, but I guess one thing that bothers me is, will people actually be willing to take this vaccine? Because there have been so many things around mistrust in the government. There's the whole anti-vax movement. There's the whole conspiracy theory movement. And, will people actually take this vaccine? Will you take this vaccine, Paul, importantly?
I'm in two minds about it, but I do think there will be a queue of people ready to take this vaccine because people really are desperate to get back to ordinary life. But I think the issues you raise are valid. I do think that trust in government has been undermined. Track and trace is still not working the way it should be. How are they going to roll out this vaccine? And also, there is this huge anti-vax movement whereby people are, distrusting vaccinations. So I do think, yeah, government has got an uphill struggle to convince people to trust this new treatment for COVID.
Yeah, and I think it's not helped by the fact that since COVID has started, the government have basically made so many mistakes in how they're communicating to the public, which means that trust in them has further eroded. And a good example of that is the most recent press conference, in terms of the figures that the government shared with us. So apparently the range that they should have pointed us to has actually been downgraded. So they were speaking about, for example, expected deaths due to COVID, expected hospital admissions, and both of those sets of figures have been downgraded because their estimates were too high. I don't think the actual methodology itself was wrong, but they basically gave us the higher range of those figures, which they shouldn't have done. And, unfortunately, things like this feed into conspiracy theorists. They feed into this narrative that the government is, some people say it's not real. And of course it is real. COVID is real. But when you give the public wrong information, you are just helping that whole trust erosion to be further eroded, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And I agree with you. I think these conferences have been a great initiative by the government. It gives us a chance to hear from them directly, to ask questions, to have the science explained to us. And we do need it explained in a way that's clear, easy to understand, and transparent. But that does mean it also needs to be truthful and accurate. And it isn't, like you say, people will question it. And people who don't believe in this government or who are against the government or who don't believe in COVID will jump on it. And again, it's just another excuse to say, no, don't trust it, not taking that vaccine. And this is where I guess Pfizer, the company who have manufactured the vaccine, their comms is vital. And all the various decision-making bodies who will decide whether or not it does get rolled out, we need to be able to trust and understand their methodology. And it's interesting because generally we don't think about it, do we? If you've got a headache, you take a paracetamol or an aspirin, and you don't think about the processes drugs go through. You don't think about the antibiotics you take or whatever. But here, there is such high public interest in this vaccine and in whatever else comes down the line, that actually we do need the government and everyone working with them to get it right. And I do fear that they might not.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to, I was going to say Jean Claude Van Damme, but of course that's not him. Oh God, what is his name? Now I've actually forgotten his real name.
JVT?
But yeah, that's him.
Oh, sorry, I got his name wrong. Professor JVT.
Professor JVT, um, not Jean Claude Van Damme. I was listening to how he was describing, the process involved in this vaccination, and he was using the analogy of a train coming into the station, and we can see the lights, but it still has to get to the station. It's moving slowly, and then the doors don't open straight away. And I thought that was a really good way of him describing this process, because I guess there is a tendency, and we saw it in the markets. I mean, the markets really picked up. It was quite buoyant on news that of this possible vaccine. That there is, I guess, there may be an element of people who may think that hey, there's a vaccine on the horizon, we can relax, and that's not the case at all, because this still has a very long way to go, and even then, there's never any guarantees of anything, is there?
Yeah, and I think that's something that people really need to understand, because what we don't want is for some people to start having it in December and for others to think, right, it's not in the community anymore. I'm going out and I'm
Mm,
social distance and whatever. I think we really do need to explain to us who is prioritized for the vaccine and why, how it will be given, and then what else must people who haven't had the vaccine, what must they continue to do?
yeah.
Different rules for people who are vaccinated and people who aren't, what are, how will we continue to live our lives?
Exactly, exactly. Because this is just the beginning of it all. This is not the end, sadly. But you're right. I mean, just some other things around trust as well. Obviously, there was news just recently about Kate Bingham, who is I like this word, the czar looking at vaccines, and she engaged some PR consultants, and we know all about PR because we work in PR. But she engaged some PR consultants to oversee the media strategy around kind of like vaccines. And it for me, this is another example of where this government stinks, quite frankly, because obviously there are civil servants, there are lots of PR people who work for the government in various government departments, but they have procured, we don't know exactly how, whether this was an open tender or not, but they procured the services of this PR firm, which cost £670,000. This PR firm, interestingly, is linked to, so one of the directors is linked to, or a long-standing business associate, let me get this right, is reported in the media, of Dominic Cummings' father-in-law. And also, it stinks again because Kate Bingham is also married to a Conservative minister, Jesse Norman. I mean, for me, it all stinks. It all stinks. And this is yet another example of how it seems as though this government's crew, they've got all their noses in the trough, and they're kind of like, making lots of money out of this. How can we trust them, Paul?
I I have concerns with some elements of this story.
Go on, what elements?
I think I have concerns about the transparency around how the company was appointed. I
Yeah.
think that actually, with everything in government, we should be able to understand who gets contracts, how they're appointed, what are the benefits to society and to the taxpayer. And I don't think that's very clear here, especially because government has hundreds of comms people and really good comms people. So I'm not sure what this PR company's bringing. And that's why I would like to see this PR company and the people who appointed it tell us. That's all they need to do, is they just need to tell us, what have you been appointed to do and how are you appointed. I don't, the concerns about, I've seen stuff about how much they earn and how much the contract's worth. Well,
Mm.
actually, if we find out what they're doing and it's worth that, then fine. I do have concerns, though, that we probably will find that that money isn't being used to deliver anything for the public. And so, as you say, it stinks. I think we just need answers and we need transparency. Um, and it's, that really annoys me and frustrates me. I think, and we've seen this a lot through the pandemic, the government has been appointing contracts without having to go through usual processes, which is okay or appropriate during a crisis. You need to appoint contracts quickly, but
Hmm.
you need to also be able to stand up and say, this is why we appointed them, this is how it happened. And, digging into people's links and connections, yeah, fine, but actually that just adds a distraction. I think the key focus is on, is the transparency and what the taxpayers get in.
Yes, that too. But I don't think the linkages are a distraction. I think this is part of it, because if you're giving money to people who happen to be your mates, that's bad, because it's not only is the process of it questionable, but it's like there's an insiders club here that are benefiting from you and I, the tax that we pay. Why should that be the case? Why should it be, a person who's got a link to somebody that's kind of preferred supplier? That's not right. That's not ethical.
I don't think it's the fact they have a link that's the problem. I think it's that we don't understand how the the contract was awarded and how that came about. People know each other, and what you want to know though, that it was appointed fairly and through an open process. That
So you so
that's
you
what the
don't
problem is.
so you don't see a problem with the fact that Dido Harding, no experience kind of running this type of thing in terms of track and trace, is married to a Tory minister, I believe. Now this Kate Bingham's popped up, also married to a Tory minister. Contracts awarded to lots of Tory kind of friends and family and the like. You don't think that's a problem? You think that's fine?
I don't have a problem with who Dido Hardin's married to. I have a problem with the fact that she's incompetent and isn't doing a and probably shouldn't be appointed to that job. And so I'd like to understand how she got that job and
Well, because of who she knows. She got it because of who she knows.
that's
That's
why she should be fired. I just think sometimes we kind of get ourselves obsessed with who people are sleeping with and married to, that we lose sight of the actual focus. And actually, the thing that angers me is the lack of transparency. People marry people, and that's fine. But what
yeah,
I
but
don't understand is how they've got that job.
they got the job because of who they're married to. The two are inextricably linked, Paul.
Yeah,
That's the point.
and she's no good at her job, so let's get her out of the job.
Double jeopardy. Oh dear. Well, I personally, I mean, any form of nepotism like that, I just think it stinks in high office. We've seen it with Trumpy. You can't. I mean, it's just so blatant and so open for everybody to see that it's just wrong.
That's what worries me even more, actually, is that it's there, it's happening, but we don't seem to be able to do anything about it, or I don't know. I don't know what is actually happening in terms of
Hmm.
removing these contracts, removing these people. And it's, as you say, it's in the papers. We're all reading about it. We're talking about it, but nothing's happening.
No, that in itself is scary as well, because it's like this stuff is happening in plain sight, and more of it seems to be happening, and there doesn't seem to be any accountability, and then it keeps happening, and then it becomes normalized, and then people don't talk about it anymore, and then it's literally the old boys network in front of our eyes. It's not secret anymore. It's just there for all to see. I think it's awful.
Old Persons Network, boys and girls, Nido Hardin. But I know
Yeah,
it is,
yeah.
yeah, it's the inner circles, it's jobs for the boys and girls and people who are scratching each other's backs. And it is concerning that there just doesn't seem to be any way for, I don't know whether it's Parliament that needs to look into this and do something about it. The fact the job wasn't advertised. And isn't there a legal challenge being brought against the government's decision?
Yeah, the Good Law Project. Yeah, which is brilliant because it's looking into all of the contracts, and it has found that I think there's like I can't remember the figure, but a significant figure, a hole, basically a black hole of unaccountability in terms of how contracts have been awarded that have not been disclosed to the public. So yeah, I think things like that are really useful. And they've got kind of what's the word? I'm lost for words this evening, but they are crowdsourcing for people to donate to their campaign.
Yeah.
I think things like that are really important.
I mean, it's worrying that, I mean, they want to bring a judicial review, and I don't know, I mean, our government hates judicial reviews and is trying to undermine them, but we know their approach to the rule of law. They don't believe in upholding it. But I do think what's happened to the National Audit Office and the checks and balances and our committee structures, and, you know, I just, that, you know, Parliament's there and there are checks and balances that already exist. It shouldn't take the public and citizens to have to crowdsource to hold our government to account. And, you know, that's really worrying and concerning for me. Yeah.
I agree. And how do you think that our Prime Minister has been performing generally around COVID, and also when does his new spokesperson start? I would have thought that she would have have started by now.
I think she has started. And actually, I'm just looking on Twitter because I think there was some confusion about what her role is, because isn't she actually working for Rishi?
Really?
Or
You
yeah,
sure?
she's Director of Strategic Communications, HMT.
I thought that was her old job.
Oh, is that what she was doing? I thought she was.
You can tell this is live.
Oh God. But she still got that on her Twitter anyway. But I don't know whether she started then.
Yeah, maybe she hasn't. But how do you think Boris has been getting on? Do you think his performances have improved, or are they still dire?
I think he's got better at. I mean, one of the things I've been impressed by is that when there's an issue, he is now getting in front of the camera and talking to the country. I think he's still, well, he's Bumbly Boris. He doesn't answer all the questions we want answered always. And I think we still have this tension between the science and what politicians want to happen. And so I do think it means that, you know, messages are confused and mixed, and people don't always understand where we're going. But I don't think he's got any worse. He's not.
I suppose when your base level is so low, really, where can you go from there? Where can you go from there? But the fact that he kept the nation waiting and waiting last Saturday night with this announcement I think that was shocking. I think that was so embarrassing that I realised that, well, however this happened, however the story was leaked, and there's a leak inquiry apparently that's taking place, whatever the story is, if you say you're having a press announcement at a certain time, you should be there. This is you're the Prime Minister. You're keeping the nation waiting. I think it was awful that we had to wait for, what was it? It was supposed to be at 5 o'clock. Then it moved to 6. Then it was 6:30, and then it was kind of
Strictly Come Dancing.
I think it was terrible. It was so unprofessional. Unprofessional.
I think this is the least of the worst things that Boris Johnson and this government have done through the pandemic.
Yeah, but it's not professional, is it, Paul? It's not on.
Well,
it's not cricket.
I mean, it's a crisis. It's a pandemic. If he needs to longer working out, how he's going to address the nation, I think allow him that, especially in the way that it had been blown up by the media. I think the fact that the media is taking sources and reporting them as facts and news and forcing the Prime Minister to have to make a speech is just not on, really, is it?
Oh, you're blaming the media for this. It's someone within. We don't even know who it was. It could have been him for all we know. We just don't know who it was that leaked this information. But it was leaked, and obviously the media got hold of this information and they did their jobs. What were they to do? Hold it and not report on it?
Well, it was mad because you see this a lot with the press, and the papers will write, an unnamed source has said this, and this. But it was really bizarre to see the BBC on, was it Saturday morning? And, there was unnamed sources have told us that this might happen and that might happen. And we think it's because of this, but we don't know. And I just thought, this isn't news. And I was watching the BBC, and I can't remember the presenter's name, but they were standing outside Downing Street. And I was just thinking, just turn around, knock on the door and ask them, get the you're basically standing here telling me rumours and stories that may or may not plan out. And so it's no wonder that the Prime Minister was then forced to have to do something. So in this case, I do completely blame the media. And I completely know that journalists do have to, if they've got a story, they have to follow it up, they have to chase the facts. But in this case, they didn't have the facts. They didn't have a story. They were reporting, I don't know if it was a quiet news day, but they were reporting on something that may or may not happen. And I just thought, what is this? This is a
Yeah, but
this is a pandemic. Why are you reporting to me sources? And I think in this climate, we really do rely on the media as well as government to actually sort the wheat from the chaff and to actually give us straightforward news, not give us opinions, not give us spin, not try and back the Prime Minister into a corner always, get questions, get answers, but to actually stand there and say, oh, there's something that might happen or it might not. And it may be today, it might not. It might be Thursday, it might be Wednesday. It was just nonsense. And
but
I just thought, what, I flicked over and watched the other side, watched the
Paul, they would have obviously had a credible source. It wouldn't have been like Joe from the
tell
CAF.
me who the source is then. And I know you love the lobby system and you love that inside secretive system, but I just the source. And this is why the Prime Minister did the right thing and he said, right, give me a moment, let me compose myself, a fact, then I will tell you what's happening. If you have forced me to do this, fine. But then he came and he explained to the public. But this whole thing of, a source said this, a source said that in the inside the corridors of Westminster or however they're doing it now. It's just not useful and it's just not right. And in an open and democratic society, we do not need hidden sources and the media, doing this broken dagger stuff. It's just not right, being honest.
But but Paul, Paul, I had to call you out because
I
on
wouldn't
many
anything else.
on many occasions, the government have released important information about COVID on like a Saturday evening, late at night, because we've tweeted about this, late at night to their favourite sources, well, not favourite sources, their favourite media outlets like the Telegraph or the Mail, something that's highly important before it's gone to Parliament, before we have been told about it. They announce it through the media on a Saturday night, on a Friday night. I mean, what do you think about that? You can't basically be in favour of one and not the other, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I can. These are two separate issues, Bianosa.
Oh, you're informal.
This is the issue of sorry. The issue of a leak that is there's no story and there's no substance to it.
But there was, because it came out that very day.
Still having discussions and working through the detail. We don't know when they were going to make the announcement. But when they make, and then there's also making announcements, late at night. I completely agree with you about the timings. But actually, again, you can't control the timings. They make the announcements because we're in a crisis. And so they put it out so that it gets in the papers, it hits the papers the next day, it goes straight onto social media, which is one of the fastest way of disseminating information. So just because you haven't had a personal phone call to tell you, what the news is, doesn't mean that it's wrong. I think I don't necessarily have an issue with that. But there's two
So,
separate issues. A secret leak is not the same as the government putting a story out on Twitter or to the Times late at night.
oh, really? So you're happy for an important aspect of COVID to be released to, say, the Telegraph, which is behind a paywall, by the way, or the Times, whereby you can't access it unless you have access to that publication. You're very happy for that to be the case and for the information to be shared in that manner. You think that is the sign of a good functioning democracy.
So this is different. So the first point is this is different to the secret leak that happened, who we don't even know what the source was, and the reporting of hearsay. Where
we don't know if it was a secret leak, though. We don't know. I'm going to be very conspiratorial about this. We don't actually know what happened.
Well, we didn't actually have a story. We had a secret leak of a non-story.
Well, no, because it was a story, and you say secret leak. It was someone within that cohort of ministers. It was one of their people. One of their people have done this. Has done this.
Yeah, and I think we know it's one of four people, and they're doing what's it called, the canary trap, where they're
Oh yeah.
going to use Colleen's method of identifying who it was. But I think that is different to them giving a story directly to a newspaper or putting it out on Twitter or to the Times. Um, I, on the surface, I do think there's issues with giving it, as an exclusive. But in this day and age, exclusives are very rarely exclusives. As soon as it's it's on the front page of the Telegraph, it's on the news, it's in the news review, and it's out. Everyone knows, and the government very quickly has been addressing the public. So I don't actually, in this day and age, I don't have a concern about it. A few years ago, when people were having to go out and buy a newspaper, I was very concerned if your only source of news was that paper you bought, in the morning, and you didn't have the story. But actually, I haven't seen a struggle to know what the latest is in terms of lockdowns and tiers and all of that. So, no, I don't
What?
have a problem.
So you've not had concerns whereby things that should have been announced in Parliament first, for example, and that's happened where they've basically disrespected the House, and it's been in the media, and then he's gone to make an announcement or talk about it to MPs. I think that's disrespectful, and that undermines the democratic system that we have in this country.
So again, that's a third issue. There's an issue about going to the press. There's an issue about leaks from secret people, not secret leaks, whatever. And there's an issue about not going to Parliament.
Hmm.
There is, yeah, and that is something that I think the Speaker's been trying to address and has got nowhere, it seems. But yeah, Boris should be informing Parliament and following the right processes when there needs to be legislation passed or there needs to be a debate. I think on significant issues, it should be going to Parliament. And and recently, I think he followed the process correctly. He went to Parliament, he then made a speech, and then I think Sakir gave his response. But there are also times in a crisis when you can't be going to Parliament every 2 minutes. And if it doesn't require, if it's not a significant change and requiring a vote, I don't think we need to be recalling Parliament every time for it. But I do think there have definitely been occasions where Parliament hasn't been kept informed in the way.
Yeah. Well, look, this has plenty more months, sadly, to run, this whole COVID situation, and I'm sure we'll come back to it again. But it's been good to chew the fat about what's been going on most recently on COVID, and no doubt we will be back again. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. As per usual, you can follow us on Twitter at Bants.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Bants.
And if you're watching on YouTube, fantastic. Subscribe, tell your friends, like us, leave a comment. We love all of that stuff. If you're listening, we also love reviews as well. So please do leave us reviews. And we will be back again with another installment very soon. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.